Good morning. It's a pleasure to welcome you all to the UNFCCC site event here in Bonn on the occasion of the 23rd Conference of the Parties of the UNFCCC. I would like to thank you for joining us today, and in particular, to thank all of our speakers who will each share with us some exciting and thought-provoking presentations about how the fashion industry players are planning to undertake vibrant approaches to transform the industry into a future aligned with the goals of the Paris Agreement. My name is Stefani, and I'll be the moderator for the event. So I'll share a short anecdote about myself and why I have been asked to be here with you today. My earliest memories are of dressing my dolls with fabric scraps underneath my mother's sewing machine located in a breezeway of our home, surrounded by banana plants, mango trees, hummingbirds, and quetzals, with the occasional monkey outside our gate, a buzzing city. For me, fashion, nature, and the city life all coexisted. I grew up believing that I came from a special place, where my people didn't believe in war or civil unrest, where most of our GDP was reinvested into education and the environment, and all its inhabitants should be protected and have equal rights, human and the like. Sounds a bit utopian or a childhood memory, but no, it was business as usual. See, after all, it is a special place. It's Costa Rica. It sounds perfect, and I assure you, though, it is not. However, we are trying. Since the 1950s, while the rest of the world began a fast track towards mass industrialization and globalization, Costa Rica took a stand towards ecological conservation along with climate policies that implemented sustainable development, resulting in a population where respect for the environment and ethical views were part of the culture. Rapidly halting emissions and achieving a climate-neutral economy requires fundamental change from all sectors of the business world, including and especially the fashion industry. So, I founded my company, Nomadic Collector, exactly 3 years ago, with the mission of creating a business based on transparent local supply chains and innovating artisanal traditions into clean manufacturing systems. The We Mean Business Coalition has identified 5 opportunities for businesses resulting from the near universal international adaptation of the Paris Agreement. These opportunities are to seize new and expanding low-carbon market opportunities, align investment decisions to long-term policy certainty, benefit from coherence across borders and into new markets, increase investor confidence and protect operations by managing climate risks, be recognized as leaders among their peers by taking climate action. Efforts to design and promote a new low-carbon and sustainable system for fashion production and consumption are well underway. While much remains to be done, many organizations and companies are indeed taking the lead to change business as usual. Brands are adopting various climate and sustainable approaches, including by measuring their climate impact and looking beyond their first tier of suppliers, integrating sustainability into core business practices, making efforts to bring transparency to the supply chain and applying a variety of innovative solutions. Fashion industry has a large and growing impact on climate change. While its total impact is difficult to assess due to lack of data and inappropriate tools, the sector's CO2 emissions are expected to increase to more than 60% by nearly 2.8 billion tons per year by 2030, according to projections in a recent report by the Global Fashion Agenda and the Boston Consulting Group. That brings us to our first speaker. His name is Alexander Meyer, one of the principals and global sustainability expert for the Boston Consulting Group. He is responsible for managing and implementing sustainability and circular economy projects jointly with clients across the globe, including with the fashion industry. For those who are not aware, the Boston Consulting Group is a global management consulting firm and advisor on business strategies, and Alex will provide us with some interesting findings from the report I just mentioned called The Pulse of the Fashion Industry, as well as his thoughts on how circularity will disrupt the fashion industry. Thank you.
Thanks a lot. As Stefani already introduced, I'd like to talk about the pulse of the fashion industry, but especially looking at the sustainability topics of this and how circularity is likely to disrupt yet another industry. But first of all, let's get started and kind of think about Why are we having these discussions, right? In the end, we're using up resources to produce goods. And we are all aware of fast fashion retail. We all want to wear the nicest looking clothes and clothing. So we are heading to the large companies and retail stores to buy and purchase garments basically every single day. However, we're using up so many resources that the planet is currently not able to refurbish and renew itself. And that's one of the threats, maybe the biggest threat we are facing currently. So you all are probably aware of Earth Day. That's the day per year when we are basically having used up all the resources that as humankind we can use up, that the Earth renews in 1 year. Currently this day is already beginning of August, meaning we're using up 1.5 planets currently, and if we continue on this trajectory with the way we do business, with the way we do our economics, we will be ending up using 2 planets by 2030. So something needs to change. And fashion is part of that change. If you look at all the textiles and garments you're purchasing, only or less than 20% of those are actually refurbished, reutilized. Most of them, especially in the developing worlds, are thrown away, are just thrown into land, end up in oceans in the end. So something needs to change. And fashion is a huge part of this. So if you look at the industry data, about $1.5 trillion worth of economics are in the fashion industry. This is a significant chunk of global economy, right? We are basically employing 60 million people around the globe, especially those in the lower income countries. So this is an industry that provides jobs and the basis for life for many, many million families on this planet. At the same time, consumers are purchasing about 60 million tons of apparel each and every year. This trend is increasing. It's significantly increasing. So we estimate by 2030, this number will be already at about 100 million tons per year. So we're looking at a growth, especially with the fast fashion retail currently, of about 65% until 2030. Having said that, considering the fact that we are exploiting our planet right now, something needs to change. So we should not neglect, though, that fashion, and all of us in this room acknowledge this, is really about feeling good, about looking good, being sexy, you name it, right? So we don't want this, what's supposedly boring, just bio-cotton-based materials. We want sexy fashion. And to say this, the question is, how do we combine these elements, saving the planet, providing economic growth to the industry, yet keeping the consumers and customers happy? We partnered with, for example, with the Global Fashion Agenda and the Sustainable Apparel Coalition to really identify and define the basis, really the number basis, the economic basis of the industry, and identify the pulse of the industry, where this industry currently stands. So you might be wondering, where do they stand? And quite honestly, we're looking at a score between 0 and 100, and the average of the industry scores at 32. This is really low. So we try to identify where the pulse of this industry towards social and environmental and ethical terms currently stand, and all we could find was 32. This is quite shocking. Having said that, and to be fair, there's a very wide spread among companies, among players. We have looked at some of the leaders that rank somewhere between 60 and 70, yet not even close to 100. And especially the smaller, mid-sized companies and very small companies don't have the financial capacities to really enable any environmental, social aspects in their daily business, and hence score very low. So overall, the pulse is very low of this industry. Yeah, I told you at the beginning something needs to change, yet we have a very low pulse. So this doesn't seem to be promising. However, let me show you the numbers why it is promising. We identified that about $160 billion of economic impacts globally are at stake each and every year if the industry doesn't change and doesn't move. This means there are some of the aspects obviously are disaster relief, environmental impacts for cleaning up some of the rivers, social stakes for paying less than minimum wage, and so on. But also, there's a 3 to 4% EBIT risk to all the companies globally if regulators move on, if materials become more costly. there's a significant business risk. And as you see, for example, in the energy industry, once there's a business case, the business sector starts moving, starts evolving, developing solutions. And this is the positive notion and positive news about this. So there's a significant amount of value at risk. So I can assure you there are good and many good efforts already going on, and you'll be hearing 2, 3 in a second, where actually large companies and startups are really trying to do something better and starting to do business good. Not only trying to create value and just thinking about their profits, but really combining environmental, social aspects into their operations. So there are many good examples, yet it is by far not enough to really achieve the full potential here. So we need to think a little bit broader how we can start changing these. And some of the very interesting examples you'll be hearing from H&M or C&A just came out with a C2C fully biodegradable sustainable t-shirt, right? These are all very, very good signals, yet it's by far not enough. So you might be wondering, what would be enough? And we started looking at this also within this report, and we need to start rethinking how we do products. We need to start rethinking solutions. So just setting up as a single company some kind of collection system is not sufficient enough, doesn't move the needle. So the industry needs to collaborate, really needs to advance jointly to establish systems that ensure collection and recycling systems. Each and every company is incentivized to optimize their production processes. So you see examples on less water usage, less energy consumption, because it directly hits the bottom line of these companies. And they have been doing this for 50, 60, 70 years. So they're really good and strong in this. However, changing some of the input materials and really considering not only trying to close the loop as such, but really thinking about what kind of materials do we put in the first place into this cycle, this needs to change across the industry, right? So we need to start thinking solutions and bigger picture. In that sense, there are just a few challenges that not a single company on this planet can solve. So let's really try to think full value chain, closed loop. Having said this, I already emphasized it is a lot of stake right now. It's a lot at stake, not only for companies, but for society as a whole. Interestingly enough, if you look at other industries, it's usually the regulators or the consumers moving in. This is quite different in this industry. It's really the fashion industry that starts thinking about establishing a system that's more sustainable without the pressure from the consumers, and currently still with little pressure from the regulators across countries. So let's all also start thinking about our behavior as a consumer and customer and really support these sustainable and more lasting initiatives that some of these companies are putting out there, rather than just being part of the fast fashion retail part. So I urge the industry to really think about collaborating, about really trying to think on how to push this industry forward beyond basic regulation, beyond customer demand, because something needs to change for the good, and there's high value at risk and stake. Having said this, I'd just like to conclude, the fashion industry is not the only one, but it might be the next to be completely disrupted. If you look at the energy sector about 10, 15 years ago, if you look at the chemical sector just 20 years ago, if you look at some other, like the automotive transportation sector, these are all industries currently being disrupted. And fashion will be disrupted as well soon by those companies, by those players who really combine social, environmental and ethical terms into their operations to produce goods that don't only sell for good profit, but that are actually good for the planet and for the health also of the consumers. Thanks a lot for the time.
I wanted to ask you a few questions, though, Alex. So why do you believe the fashion industry, though, has taken so long, and why are they finally acting now?
Well, I think there was just not enough pressure, to be honest. I mean, in some other industries, you had regulators moving on, you had certain incentives to do business better than we did before, for example, on renewables versus fossil-powered power plants and so on. I think the pressure was simply not enough, but now with digitization, with the social media campaigns being harder and harder, with more and more NGOs creating leverage and putting pressure on these companies, obviously the pressure is increasing. And also, I would say from an industry perspective, more and more people within the industry have realized they're doing business. Obviously, they need to earn money, but there's more to it than simply just profits. And that obviously is the overall responsibility of those businesses.
Okay, so even though the score is low, you think that the positive, I see that you're very positive, so I think that this is, I guess, because it is coming from inside the industry and not really external pressures.
I am very positive that we are moving in the right direction. To be quite fair, though, we're not moving fast enough. So I would say the trends and the opportunities we see are very, very positive, but they're coming in way too slowly.
So, I mean, any particular maybe suggestion that you could give to companies as an individual, as where and how they could really start moving faster?
Yeah, so I mean, as I said, I guess each and every company is incentivized by its bottom and top line. So optimizing processes, thinking about really closing the cycle in water management, energy efficiency is a no-brainer. There are cases right now, and actually proven cases, I mean, I mentioned C&A, where you could think about the material constitution of those products. Price don't change, costs don't change, but the materials that are harmful to water, to life, to the environment have been taken out. The consumer didn't even notice anything. So there's a really good example on how this industry can create value. And the next thing is there are overarching challenges that not a single company can solve. Anything around the collection reutilization scheme, closing the loop as such, is really a bigger challenge than a single company can take on. But I'm very positive in other industries. We've also seen the leaders of the industry really joining forces, collaborating and really accelerating some of the positive change. And if the industry is not managing this well, the regulators will eventually move in, and that will hurt some of the businesses harder than expected right now.
Okay, thank you very much, Alex, for these insights. And now we move on to our next speaker, Ms. Vanessa Rothschild, who is the Sustainability Business Controller at H&M and an advocate for H&M's effort on positive fashion future. H&M has developed a groundbreaking climate strategy. It's a bold commitment for H&M to be climate positive across its entire value chain by 2040, at the latest. So, Vanessa, we look forward to hearing for examples on which H&M, considering its size and scale, can move towards this climate positive future. Thank you. Oh, please.
Yeah, it works. Hello, it's a pleasure to be here, and it's a pleasure to be here also with my fellow panelists. I think we're a great team here. How are you feeling? Good? I'm feeling good too. I have three main feelings, I think. A bit nervous, I guess that's normal. I feel proud of representing H&M. And at the same time, I feel humble at the journey that we as a company, but also as a whole industry, have in front of us to become truly sustainable. And today I'm here to represent H&M. Oh, now I turned it off. There we go. The H&M Group, and we are a world-leading fashion retailer with the ambition to make good quality, sustainable clothes available to as many people as possible. And as you can see here, sustainability is a part of our business idea. And I really like to start here because this is such an important tool for us. I mean, I work for the Global Sustainability Department, and not only me, but everyone in the company can use this as a tool to always ask, whatever decisions we take, yes, but is that really in a sustainable way? So this is the best tool that we have to drive the fashion industry towards full sustainability. I'm sure many of you are aware that the H&M Group consists of 8 brands today, and we have stores, we have over 4,500 stores, and more importantly, maybe for this context, is that we work with over 1,800 first-tier suppliers. So that's just to give you a little insight into the level of complexity of our value chain. And we know, and as Alex has portrayed a very good introduction, I think, we know that our company, our industry has had very big impacts on the planet. And we also know that in order to deliver fashion and at good quality fashion in a sustainable way to a growing middle class population, we need to change the way our products are made and used. And as you see here, I mean, we see an increase in population, but we see an even bigger increase in consumption of fashion. And this is because it's the middle class that is growing. So for us, it's really a question of resources and really putting pressure on us to decouple business growth from the use of resources and move into a 100% circular model. And this is really why we have given ourselves a new vision, put in a new gear in our sustainability work, because we want to use our size and scale to lead the change towards a circular and renewable fashion while being a fair and equal company. And this is a very powerful vision. And today I will focus on the environmental part and more specifically on the climate part of that. But as you can see, it consists of 100% circular and renewable. There's the fair and equal part, and there's also the leading the change approach that we have. But in order to become 100% circular, we need a circular approach to how products are made and used. And we have identified 4 stages that we need to address in order for this to happen. First of all, we need to look at how our products are designed, and we need to design for circularity. Second of all, we need to look at our materials and just like Alex said, look into what is going into our supply chains and what materials are we using, and really maximize the use of recycled materials. And we have set a goal to have a 100% recycled or other sustainably sourced materials by 2030. And this, I will get to that, but it will require a lot of collaboration, a lot of innovation, but we are really confident that we will get there. Then the third phase is the actual production processes. And here we need to drive and to work with chemical use, water use, and energy use in a responsible way. And the fourth stage, last but not least, we also need to look at what happens when our products are with the customer. We need to promote longer use of our clothes. We need to allow others to use them. And we also need to recycle into new materials to come back into closing the loop. And of course, then there is the logistics parts and the own operations. But even maybe more importantly, or it's hard to say what is most important, everything is about the holistic approach here. But what we also need to do is to fuel this circular model with renewable energy. And now coming into our climate goal. And what we have done with our leadership approach is that we took a stand in the Paris Agreement, looking at what the world needs to do to stay under a preferably 1.5 degree pathway. And then we asked ourselves, okay, what is leadership on the Paris Agreement? Well, we want to be below 2 degrees, we want to do it before 2050, and we want it to encompass our whole value chain. And this resulted in our new climate positive goal, which is to have a climate positive value chain in 2040 at the latest. And when we say this, this means from the raw materials, from the cotton fields until the washing machines and the recycle bins. So it's really encompassing the whole value chain. And what it actually means also is that we will reduce our emissions to a greater extent than our value chain is responsible for. And we have identified 3 priorities that we need to work with in order for this to happen. The first one is energy efficiency. We need to minimize the amount of energy and really be efficient with the energy that we use. And this is valuable in our own operations, where we need to set the example, but also to work with our suppliers and to encourage our customers to be energy efficient. And then the energy that we actually use should be 100% renewable. Same thing there, our own operations, but also throughout the whole value chain. And this is a bold commitment and a huge task. And we know that there will be some unavoidable emissions. So that's where the third leg in our climate strategy comes in, which we call climate resilience and carbon sinks. And what this means is that we also need to support the planet's existing mechanisms to resist and recover from climate change. And there we want to do that in 3 different ways. Work with natural carbon sinks, so that's the planet's existing mechanisms, to investigate which projects we should join and invest in order to for the planet to recover from climate change. And then the really, I think, exciting part and where a lot of innovation comes in is technological carbon sinks, where we actually want to develop products that are sucking up the carbon dioxide from the air. And these materials exist today in terms of plastic, and there are materials coming up. And here we really need to collaborate with experts and innovators to make this happen. And then we also see that we need to work with reductions outside of our value chain. So, for example, to support our customers to live energy efficient lives and with consuming renewable energy. And if we look at then our own operations and the milestones that we have set along the way, because this climate positive value chain, that's really a guiding star and a direction that we have set for the whole group. But then each business function, and this is where the really important work of business integration comes in, that we need to integrate this into our business processes. So each of our business functions, they need to think and say, okay, climate positive value chain until 2040. What does that mean for me as a marketing department, as a production department, as an online department? All of our departments need to think of this and have ownership for their own goals. So this is just to give you an example of some of the milestones that have been set by our business functions. And of course, we see that the strongest possible way of achieving impact is to have this full ownership within the company and within the different business functions. So our facility management, they have set a goal to increase energy efficiency by 25% until 2030 compared to 2016. So this is for our own operation, the electricity used in our stores. And then also to have 100% renewable energy in our own operations. Today we are at 96%, but we're also looking into different methods of procurement when it comes to renewable energy, with having additionality in mind. And then coming to the production processes, and if we look across our value chain, the product manufacturing and together with fabric and raw material, as well as the use of our products, are the biggest sources of emissions along our value chain. And our supply chain in production, they have taken this full ownership and set their first milestone, which is to have a climate neutral supply chain, meaning tier 1 and tier 2, by 2030. And another milestone to get there is that all of these suppliers should be enrolled in energy efficiency programs until 2025. And as a consequence of these goals, we want to achieve a 30% reduction of greenhouse gas emissions per product by 2025. And also, as I mentioned, we've set this goal of having 100% recycled or other sustainably sourced materials. And that's also a really important milestone towards a climate positive value chain, because recycled materials use much less energy and emit much less CO2 emissions. And of course, we see that there are great challenges in achieving this, and especially in our supply chain. And there are countries today where renewable energy is not available. There are a lot of challenges. And this is why collaboration is so important. And we are collaborating with governments and local organizations to find those solutions. And one example that I think is really a good example of also how we want to use and how we can use our size and scale is a project that we run together with WWF, who is a strategic partner of ours, that is called We Are One Roof. We're a very value-driven company, and one of our strongest values is we are one team. And here we're actually taking that and encompassed our suppliers as well to look at to install solar panels on all of our suppliers in Bangladesh. So to really see how can we use the size and scale if we gather all of our suppliers together and install solar cells on all of the roofs. And then we're working together with IFC to find innovative and working financial mechanisms to actually drive the transition to renewable energy. And I could go on with examples. But I'd like to end here and say that we know that we don't have all the answers yet, but that we are really committed to showing that a climate-positive fashion future is possible. And we want to make fashion sustainable and sustainability fashionable. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Vanessa, for this very detailed and very interesting presentation. I'm actually really excited to hear all about this and speak with you more. But just one quick question, and maybe to give us an example or so of like the role of innovation in all of these ambitious goals. Like how important is that, and what you see as innovative processes that will go into this, achieving all of this?
Yeah, that's a really important part. And as we said, I mean, collaboration, it needs to be within the industry, across the industry, and also with innovators. And as when we look at our materials, we need to maximize the use of recycled materials. But today there are not enough technologies available for recycled materials, especially mixed fibers, so to make new garments out of mixed fibers. And so this is somewhere where we really need to drive innovation, and actually we have a collaboration with, or the H&M Foundation has a collaboration with an organization called Hong Kong Rita, and they recently had a breakthrough when it comes to the recycling of mixed fibers. So that's one example. And then I think we will hear more from Orange Fiber. It's really exciting to be here together. We have the H&M Foundation is also driving the Global Change Award, which is an innovation accelerator, really, to find those solutions. And I think right now we are in a phase where we need to test broad and find many different solutions to really identify the scalable ones and the one that can drive us towards our goals.
All right, again, thank you very much. And I really do look forward to hearing more about H&M's progress as we go forward. Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, so our next speaker is Elin Larsson, and she's the Sustainability Director at the Swedish fashion brand Filippa K. Filippa K is a clothing company committed to bringing circularity and supporting the Sustainable Development Goals. Filippa K is advocating the campaign of Conscious Design for a Better Future, and Elin in particular will give us an insight into their journey towards circular models and some things they've learned so far. Thank you.
I thought I was going to get my clock rolling, but someone has to tell me when I have to stop. So nice to see so many faces here. Wow. How many of you are actually involved in the fashion industry today? Can you raise a hand? Yeah? So do we have a lot of politicians here? Policymakers? No? Okay, let's get going. Yeah. Okay, so for you who don't know what and who Filippa K, the company is, we are a Swedish fashion brand. We produce about 1 million products a year, and we have about 50 stores of our own and about 700 premium retailers. And the reason why we exist is actually to show that simplicity is the purest form of luxury, and that we want to inspire to a movement of mindful consumption. And in 2011, we set out these commitments for ourselves that we should reach by 2030, saying that we should only work with sustainable materials, all styles should be recyclable, our products should be produced in a sustainable way, and we should have full transparency, all people be respected, and so on. And they are really high ambitions to get there, because we have a long way to go. But we also realized when facing the reality of today, where we know that there are planetary boundaries. And we've already heard how we are already using too much of the resources we have today, how we're exploiting the planet. So how do we succeed doing business within the planetary boundaries? Because without the planet, there is no business to be made, right? And actually, for the first time in history, we have global common goals on how to get there. This is fantastic, really. But as a representative from the textile industry, we do have a big challenge because they say we are the second biggest polluter after oil. And if we look into, I'll just give you some numbers, and these are general numbers, but to produce 1 kilo of cotton fiber or fabric, it takes about 3,000 liters of water, and this is calculated low sometimes, depending on how the production process looks like, etc. 1 kilo of chemicals, 16 kilo of carbon dioxide emission, and about a half kilo waste. And if we also include the energy that's been used for the raw material, for the production and for the transports, we should add 7 kilos of oil to this picture as well. And if we look at the Swedish consumption, we do dispose about 13 kilos of textiles each year. 8 kilo goes into the trash. And if we look of what's actually in the trash, 60% of those clothes are in good shape to be used again. So it's not only the production processes that are really wasting resources, it's also we as users. And looking at other external factors on the textile industry, we do have positive insights in terms of, we see that there's interest or employees becoming more and more interest of the values. They want to work for a company that has strong values. We also talk a lot about value-based consumption. Customers start to ask relevant questions. They do care about what they actually buy and from whom. And we also see a trend in that actually availability becomes more important than ownership, perhaps so much within our industry yet, but if you look at music, if you look at films, etc. 10 years back, I wouldn't think I would not have any CDs at home. Now I don't have a single one. So that, of course, affects us as well. And then we have the digital revolution. That's going to disrupt our whole industry as well. Hopefully for the better, because that will actually help us in technical innovation, production processes, communication, transparency, etc. Oh, sorry. So is circular economy the solution to all of this? No, probably not by itself, but we think it's a really important step, and it has an important role to play. So we 3 years ago set out a plan to transform our business to circular models. And we developed an internal framework on how to get there. It's a simplified picture of circular economy. We reduce, the inner circle is about the products that we create. How can we make them as sustainable as possible, creating no waste and fully recyclable? Once they are sold, how do we get the products to live as long as possible with the first user? But we do believe that also in the future, we will actually get tired of clothes before they are worn out. So how can we make sure that the clothes get a chance to a second or a third life through the reuse circle? And then once they are worn out, how do we get them back so we can recycle them into to our new products in the reduce cycle again? So I'll give you some short examples of what we're doing today. If we look at reduce, making clothes that can last for a long time, both in terms of quality and style, has been our philosophy from the very beginning. So that's really good. 20 to 25% of our products are actually, they live for several seasons in our stores and they never go on sale. But we're also part of the same cycle in fashion, where we have seasons and sales in between. And that's not going to be it's not going to be the right way of doing business in the future. We don't have the solutions on how to change that yet. I won't go through this, but we do have a fiber tool to help our designers, to guide them through what are the sustainable choices in terms of materials that we want to see. We do know that we have to collaborate with our value chains in order to create change. So we have to collaborate with NGOs, competitors, suppliers, invite them to the table to be able to create the change we want to see. And this is just an example. It's big numbers, but these are savings from our Chinese suppliers. From last year, it's that water savings represent 15 million daily need of water for people. But it's also about including the customer, right? How can they reduce their consumption? So this is our last campaign that we had, not that complicated, where we showcase that how you can, by only 7 pieces, have 18 different looks. But this is, as I said, it's on our daily basis. But to challenge ourselves, what does it take to make sustainable fashion? How do we reach the goals for 2030? And that's where we have our front runners. It takes about 2 years to develop a front runner, to be honest. But we'll look at the product group at the time and see how can we make this as sustainable as possible throughout the whole life cycle. And then we take the learnings from a journey with a front runner and implement it in our ordinary collection and our everyday business, so that we step by step can actually get closer to our goals for 2030. Repair. So how do we prolong the life length with the user? So we try really to inspire our customers to care for the garments. If a garment breaks, we mend it. We sell care products in our stores, really fantastic products. But the main reason for doing this is actually to talk to the customers. How often do you wash? How do you wash? And we also, for the last front runners we launched, we had a 10-year of guarantee. So we would help the customer to care for their garments for 10 years. So the reuse. What do we do with the clothes we don't use anymore? So we have a collect system, so customers can bring back the Filippa K clothes they don't use anymore and get a reward for that. And the main reason for that is to give the garment a chance to a second life. It's only if it's worn out that it can go on to recycling. And we had there is a Filippa K second-hand store in Stockholm since 2008. It's been running a profitable business from day one, so it really proven its business potential. And now we're looking into how can we extend this even further. And what we also launched 2 years ago is a rental system. So you can, in selected stores, you can go into a Filippa K store and rent any piece that you want. And this is a way of helping our customers to update their wardrobe without contributing to overconsumption. And recycle. Today we can only guarantee full recycling for our front-runner products, but what we do is that we collect waste, cutting waste from our own production and send it to a fabric supplier that makes new fabrics out of it. And these are just examples of what we're doing today. And we're really on the beginning of a new journey. And we know that we cannot create this change alone. With new partners, new kind of partners, new kind of, like looking at what's waste from one industry that can become a resource for ours, for instance. And some learnings, I'm just shortly going to go through this. Communication is one major thing, both internally and externally. To be able to create this change, we need to get everyone on board. So clear goals. Also, that we need to make sure that we satisfy a need rather than trying to solve a problem, because the customer needs to understand what's in it for me. And, of course, listen to what they have to say. So we actually invited customers to become pilots for us, to try out our initiatives and our products. And we got so much applications to become a pilot, so it showcased that the customers do care. They do want to be part of something. And I'm so happy to be here today because now the politicians are actually doing the same with us. I feel like I'm getting invited to the table. We get a chance to actually collaborate. And we need to be brave enough to try new things, but also humble enough to change along the way. There's no map out there. We're trying out new paths. So we really need to be kind towards ourselves. And then, how much patience do we need? Do you know what numbers you're looking at here? That's actually the contribution of our rental service that we have. So if I would actually start showing any numbers except the 0, I would have to add a couple of yeah. But in terms, I mean, we don't have the patience. We need to move faster. And we're struggling every day in making the right choices. We're struggling because the prices are higher for making a sustainable choice. We're struggling because there are minimum order volumes. We're struggling because the IT, the business systems are not supporting our new models. We're struggling because legislation is not even supporting us. So we really would like to see a change, because we cannot count on frontrunners for sustainability in business or voluntary actions to create the change. We need the support from politicians as well. So I'm not going to go through this, but to just summarize what it says is that in order to create the change that we want to see, it needs to be more expensive to make the bad choices, because that's not the case today. Today it's actually cheaper. So if we want to reach the critical mass, if we want to reach that tipping point, this needs to change. And to pay the true prices for resources, to remove counteracting subsidies and have a precautionary principle for chemical products, just to mention 3, is crucial. Thank you.
Thank you, Elin. I did want to ask you, though, you've given us such an overview on needing this holistic approach of bringing everyone in from the company to the clients. But what have you seen really have been any major challenges in doing this, in creating this holistic approach with all of them?
It's really tough to have the holistic approach. And, it's really tough to know whether you're making a good choice or not. Just take the question about polyester. Recycled polyester, is it a good material? In the end, you're creating microplastics in the oceans. So it's really about getting relevant, good research data to be able to make those conscious, holistic choices. And we need help with that. And it's really, for a small, medium-sized company that don't have that much resources to invest in innovation and that sort of things, we need help.
Right. Okay. All right. Well, thank you so much, Elin.
Thank you.
And our next speaker is Anna Maria Rugarli, who is the Social Director, Sustainability and Corporate Social Responsibility at VF in the EMEA region. VF Corporation outfit consumers around the world with its diverse portfolio of iconic lifestyle brands like Vans, North Face, Timberland, Wrangler, and Lee. And Anna Maria will speak about environmental approaches of these iconic brands. Thank you.
Thank you so much for this introduction, and it's great to be here. I actually always start my presentation by asking who knows VF, because not many people know VF at all. There's 1, 2, 3, 4, maybe some Americans in the audience. Obviously, it's an American corporation. We have offices all around the world, and I'm based out of the European headquarters in Switzerland, in Ticino. So EMEA stands for Europe, Middle East, and Africa. That's the kind of scope of my responsibility when it comes to sustainability and social responsibility. So, yes, we do own many iconic brands like the North Face, Timberland, Vans, Napapiri, Kipling, Lee, Wrangler, and being the size we are and having the scale we have a big responsibility. So I'm going to talk about our climate strategy, and a lot of what I'm going to say you probably have already heard by my colleagues here on the panel, which, to be honest with you, is quite encouraging, because it means that we're all heading in the same direction, and it feels like it's the right direction to take. I do agree with all of them that we need strong collaboration, and we need to look at the future and become like stronger together, if you like, to make sure that we help changing the world. Now, what we've seen in the past few years, I've been working on sustainability programs for over 20 years now, and what I've seen is that businesses have become a real player. Because of our consumers, because our consumers have started caring more about what we do and the choices we make. They want to feel good about the products they buy, and we have a responsibility to make sure that we provide them products that are made in an environmental and social responsible way. So from a climate perspective, we started in 2009, we had a goal of reducing carbon emissions by 5% by 2015. And in all these years, we really focused on reducing our carbon emissions through different strategies, like using LED lights, investing in energy efficient building, started buying renewable energy where possible. And while the business was growing 40%, we managed to actually reduce our emissions by 12.6% in this time frame. So we were very happy with that. In Europe, we're actually leading the way. In these years, we managed to reduce 23%. So we did really a great job. But we felt that when we achieved this goal, we realized that we needed to evolve, because a sound climate strategy is not only about reducing carbon, is also about looking at other strategies to make sure that our impact becomes lower and lower around our value chain, around every decisions that we make. So we have come up with a new strategy, and some of it you've heard actually from H&M. Because we have some stuff in common, I just found out. So the first this strategy is made out of 4 pillars. The first one is obviously still reducing our carbon emissions. That's really important. So our new goal is to only source renewable energy, so 100% renewable energy sourcing by 2025 in owned and operated facilities. And for the not owned and operated facilities, we're working with our suppliers and the strategic ones to really help them becoming more energy efficient across the board and around the world. We're part of the BICEP coalition. We're also committed to a renewable energy 100, and obviously we report through the carbon disclosure program. So we have a strong foundation of our program. Now, the second pillar of the strategy is to restore natural carbon sinks, which we heard from H&M, and that is made of few actions. The first one is looking into sustainable agriculture. Now, we always think about reducing CO2 emissions and other things. We very seldom talk about the impact of the products that we make every day, and we make over 500 million products every year, which is an incredible number. So we do have a big impact worldwide. So sustainable agriculture for us has become a very important priority, because we buy 1% of the cotton in the world, and that comes with a big footprint. So we've started looking into sustainable agriculture and supporting some programs, for instance, through our Wrangler brand, which is very, very big in the US. We have started supporting sustainable agricultural programs to make sure that we move in the right direction there. We are also partners with the Better Cotton Initiative that looks at growing more sustainable cotton from an environmental and social perspective. And one of our brands, for instance, Timberland, they have like a mix strategy when it comes to cotton. So they use BCI cotton, they use organic cotton, and they also use cotton made in the USA. And their goal is to only source 100% of sustainable cotton by 2020. And they're very close to reaching that goal. Reforestation is also a very important topic for us. I'm going to mention timberland again, maybe because they have a tree as their logo, maybe because they've been doing it for many, many years. But one of their goals is to plant 10 million trees by 2020, and right now they have already planted 9 million trees. So they're very close to reaching their goal, and this is really important because it's part of also the reforestation strategy that we support very strongly. Another area that we have very close to our heart is conservation. One of our biggest brands is the North Face. And obviously the North Face is the biggest players in the outdoor industry. So the outdoors for the North Face is incredibly important, and making sure that we understand what it means to care for the outdoors is one of their biggest priorities. From a VF perspective, we also issued a forestry-derived material policy at the beginning of this year, just to make sure that we trace in a very transparent way all the materials that we procure. The third pillar of our strategy is human carbon sinks, which we have heard from H&M. So there's an amazing new technology that it's helping sequestering the carbon, the CO2 emissions, and kind of make them into molecules and into fibers and into products. So it's really cutting-edge technology that apparently few of us are looking at, because it's incredibly exciting. Can you believe, that we're able to actually make products out of CO2 emissions? That's really unimaginable. So it's actually very exciting. So this is just to say that, fashion, yes, is one of the big polluters in the world, but is also, I think, one of the biggest opportunities we have, not only because of the technology and the innovation that we can bring to the world, but also because we really excite consumers so much that hopefully we're a great source of inspiration for them as well. Now, the fourth pillar of our strategy is really advocacy. Advocacy is so important, especially nowadays, I should say, being an American company. Our leaders believe very strongly that we should keep supporting the climate agreements that were made in Paris. And we sent numerous letters to administrations in the past year and a half, just to make sure that we reiterate our commitment to combating, to fighting climate change. So that will not change. We have a strong commitment in this area. And VF Corporation is really investing a lot of time and energy in making sure that we stay focused on this. Again, being part of the outdoor industry as a whole, because of some of our brands being big players there, it really is a great encouragement for us to see that we're not alone. We're not alone in this area. Yeah.
Here we go. I needed to turn that on. Okay. So I think that I was going to really ask you, because of these 500 products that you're doing yearly, what you were doing to reduce this particular product footprint. But I think that you really touched on this with your different strategies. So I guess more interesting is, I know that you've written to the administration about wanting to support policy, or not, to change the policy, I suppose, but what are you doing more specifically with customers to engage them? Because as we've seen, the push for the change to the fashion industry isn't really from the consumers. And because yours are such lovers of the outdoors, what are you doing to really engage them and pull them into this and turn them actually maybe into advocates?
Yeah, so what we've done is we've conducted numerous consumer insights focus groups through some of our brands to really kind of try to understand whether consumers are really interested in products being made more sustainably. And actually, yes, they are. I mean, times have changed and people have changed, they realize how important it is. And they're also prepared to pay a little bit more to just get the added value of buying a sustainable product and feeling good about it. So this is something that we're very committed to keep doing and to keep offering more sustainable products for sure.
Okay, well, thank you very much for your presentation. And our next speaker is co-founder of Orange Fiber, which is Enrica Arena. She has co-developed a process to create a fabric using the leftovers of citrus. And she will now show us a short video to begin, which will explain how Orange Fiber came about and how it's possible that luxury fabrics can be made out of orange juice byproducts. Enrica.
Yes, you want to start with video? Or yeah, I think it will start. So thank you for your attention and actually to have me here. So while the video will be ready, I'm very grateful to be here again. And this is the story of a product that actually came out of a dream. So differently from all the other panelists today, we actually started just from the willingness to do something different. And when it all started, we had no idea where it would have led. And actually, we still are surprised to where we are and where we can be. So I'll let the video go, and then I'll start with my presentation.
Prospettiva nuova. Crescendo in Sicilia siamo state abituate a vedere le arance intorno a noi, fanno parte del paesaggio. Adriana ed io ne siamo state circondate sin da bambine. Per noi sono molto più che semplici frutti, sono opportunità se guardati con occhi creativi. Solo in Italia ogni anno vengono prodotte più di 700.000 tonnellate di sottoprodotto di agrumi. Adriana, con una formazione in design, ha osato porsi la folle domanda: e se si potessero trasformare le bucce di agrumi in abiti? Mi ha coinvolta ed insieme abbiamo iniziato a cercare una risposta. Per verificare la fattibilità della nostra idea abbiamo coinvolto il Politecnico di Milano. Giorni, settimane e mesi di duro lavoro in laboratorio. Decine di test per cercare di sviluppare un processo efficace. Oggi abbiamo un meraviglioso tessuto nelle nostre mani. È sostenibile, biodegradabile e rappresenta un grande passo avanti verso un'industria della moda più rispettosa dell'ambiente. Una mente aperta può portarti lontano, così come la creatività, ma dobbiamo fare questo percorso insieme. Il futuro non è un luogo dove andare, ma un luogo da creare.
Actually, this video was made by Global Change Award and H&M Foundation 2 years ago after we won the award, but I'll go back to the start. It was 2012-2013, and Adriana entered the lab of Politecnico di Milano, and we were both just students at the time. She was into design, and I was into development cooperation, working for an NGO. So it was totally two worlds that were not really talking together, if not in terms of value. So she had this idea, and she had the strength and the courage, I have to say, to go to Politecnico di Milano and ask, as a designer, to a chemist, actually a professor, if she can test this idea in the lab. And actually, I don't know what happens then, but I think her enthusiasm was so contagious that the professor tried, and actually from that moment onwards we realized that it was feasible, and she wanted to make it real. And at the time we were just thinking about, okay, maybe we can get she can get a patent and sell it to a fabric producer. She never had the idea of going that far in realizing it by herself, because she was aware that it was quite a journey. But what we found out is that most of the process and the supplier are not in Italy anymore for what she wanted to do. So the only thing to make it happen was to actually do it by yourself. And that's when I came on board. It was all about startup competition, so we didn't have a product at that time. But the idea was so good that she started to telling the story around and asked me to support her for a number of reasons. Actually, I come from communication, so she said, okay, just go ahead, and so you will be better. And that's how it all started. And we managed in a couple of years to fundraise enough to have the first prototypes. And actually, in the same time, we were in Milan at the time of Expo, so it was the perfect moment for talking about food waste and talking about reusing food waste for something that is in line with what Made in Italy is about. So we managed to catch the attention of a big brand that actually was our first client. So we started trying to figure out how to produce for them because they wanted to place an order. And at the same time, we were still trying to figure out the process on one hand and how to become a company on the other hand. And that's the reason why we entered Global Change Award competition at that time. So when the call came in, it was my birthday, so I will never forget that. It was like, okay, you actually won. It's like, what? Because you just drop the application as a number of application, and when you find out that 2,600 people applied at the same competition, and you are among the 5 winners, it's like, okay, is it really happening? So at the same time, now it's kind of 2 years ago, we were on one hand, producing 15,000 meters for Salvatore Ferragamo, who is our first client, and going through the acceleration program of H&M Foundation that brings us all over the place. That video was shooted in Shanghai, but apart from logistics, it was really like having a look on where we can be if we do things properly. So what if the 15,000 meters can become million meters? What do we need to get there, price-wise, product-wise, process-wise? So it was quite a journey. But at the end of the day, what we do, because it's a nice story and everything, but just assume that you are in your kitchen and you are squeezing an orange for your breakfast, maybe 2 or 3. You have the peels and you have some leftovers, which is not a big deal at a household level, but just in Italy, actually just in Sicily, that quantity is between 700,000 tons and 1 million tons. Let's say that from a fresh orange, half of the weight, it's a byproduct or a waste, if you prefer, of the process. And nobody really figured out what to do with that. Different countries have different regulation and different ways to reuse it, but none of them is really efficient in terms of cost and energy use. So what we do is that we work at the end of the production of orange juice. So we work within the plant of juice producer. We take the byproducts where it is, and we extract the cellulose that is up to be spun. We have a partner in spinning that it's in Spain, so actually it travels from Sicily to Spain because nobody else in Italy was doing the job. And then it goes back to Italy, in Como, to the silk district, where we have a number of partners in weaving, and then we send it to brands. It might sound easy, but I can assure you that it's not, because we have seasons, we have different, actually citrus byproducts per se, vary a lot, even in the same season, depending on a number of factors. So, and actually we are also going back to what you were talking about. Are we doing the right choices? So a number of times we were back to the process and back to the supplier and try to find alternatives for spinning or alternative for the process. So it's really like we are young. So on one hand, a young company, we are very flexible, so we can change. But on the other hand, we also need support from the industry, but also from the supplier to figure out what then is feasible at the industrial level, because otherwise you can have the better product or the more sustainable product, but if it costs 20 times more the normal fabric, at the end of the day, you are a commodity. And that's something you have to deal with. So maybe you can survive 1 year or 2 years, but if you have to convince investors that your company is going to grow, it's quite hard if you are positioning yourself at a price that it's out of the market or if the margins are not nice enough. So there's a lot of rhetoric around startups in Italy, and I think all over the place. But when it comes to innovative materials, well, we have been struggling around the issue for more than 5 years, and every year there's a moment when we think, okay, we are going to close tomorrow, and then there's a breakdown, and we go after, and then we continue. But seriously, we feel sometimes that there's a big gap between the interest of the brands, which is huge. I mean, seriously, I have every week one big brand dropping an email or a Facebook message saying, can I see the samples? And what happens in between? Because then they expect more of them, not all of them, that you react as a normal supplier. But what we are as a company in this moment is in between a CSR project and a supplier. So time-wise, we cannot provide something in 1 month, and we cannot cost less. And so I think there's a lot of, differences between the willingness on one hand and then the real world. And this is not real for all the brands, again, but it's something that we have to face. And also in terms of industrial scale-up, when you have your own small plant, which is nice, you can do 2 tons, 3 tons. But then if you want to scale up, they ask you 10 tons. Okay, who is going to pay the machineries to scale from 3 tons to 100 tons? Am I the right person to do that thing? I come from communication. I mean, we arrived to a process, but maybe there are companies out there that can do that with us. So we made it, and we will keep on making it. But we really, on one hand, are very excited by the interest that we receive and the support that we receive from the industry. But if I have to look at what happened in between in the supply chain, then I see some challenges out there. So I'm happy to be here, because as innovation, I see the problem from the brand side, because they want to have our product and we cannot provide it, but I also see the opportunities in between. So I'm glad to be here and can talk about it with you.
So, Enrica, so that brings me actually then to one of the questions that I have for you is you've just told us how the fashion industry is reacting and that there is a lot of willingness, but is there really like this interest for them to collaborate in this scaling, or do you want to collaborate in the scaling and the actual manufacturing and jointly manufacture with maybe some of the fashion entities, or would you like to keep all of this manufacturing yourself?
I would love to partner, and that's one of the things we are trying to get through. So can we do project financing for production? So if a brand steps in and says, okay, I'll buy this fabric for a couple of years, this minimum quantity, this will lead the supplier to maybe invest and use their pilot plants for some year. Because otherwise, if you talk with R&D guys in chemical companies or cellulose companies, they will tell you, yes, nice, but if your product costs 20 euros per kilo and I'm selling for 2 euros per kilo, I see no scale-up possible. So even if all the people from marketing and product are saying, no, but there will be a market, it's quite easy to get these two souls live together. So what we are looking for actually is brands that are willing to do that as project financing, saying if the product has these characteristics, we'll get the supply for a couple of years and for some quantities. This will for sure help us getting the funding and also the support from the supplier.
Yes, okay. And so, I mean, I see that there's a need for an orange fiber, but maybe you can tell everyone here also then really why there is this need for the orange fiber and its direct correlation with the actual fashion's climate footprint.
Well, the first thing is you have seen how much resources you need for cotton, and it's the same for man-made cellulosic fiber, like wood. And actually what we do is we have a cellulose alternative from cellulose from wood, and I don't want to bother you with the cellulose gap, but in the numbers and the figures that have been shown, it's quite demonstrated that most of the increase in demand will be actually for cotton or cellulosic fibers for their characteristics. And we know that talking about planet boundaries is not an option to have more cotton to be grown. So we need to find alternatives. And citrus byproducts can just be one of the alternatives. But this makes sense just if the product, actually the process, it's really sustainable and it's scaled up. Because still we do that in a small plant where we struggle with reuse solvent and energy and everything, then it doesn't really make sense. It proves that it's feasible, but it's not making the impact that we are willing to do. So what if you go back to the LCA or where we have an impact? Of course, if we use something that it's not alternative to food consumption, actually is a waste or a byproduct. So the resources that are used to grow the oranges would have been used anyway, and this is for food consumption. So we are not attacking any of these, and we are actually taking that instead of disposing it. And you can go back to pesticide and all the rest. So the impact on one hand that we do is avoiding these resources to be wasted. And on the other hand, we actually don't go on planet resources. So we give an alternative to the use of food or other raw materials.
Okay. And then with that, then, do you see that there is a potential way to replicate this concept with other?
Well, we patented the process for all the citrus, and if you have a look at the numbers of where oranges are grown and which byproducts is generated, having a look to the United States or Brazil or Mexico gives you the scope. The scope and the scale where these things can be replicated. So we really think there's a potential out there, and we are looking for partnership with actually juicer on one hand and then spinner on the other hand to find a solution together to make it scalable.
Thank you. And could you, I see that you do have one of your dresses
Yes.
there. At least hold it up for everyone to see one of the garments.
So yeah, I have her support, but this is one scarf that has been made for the Ferragamo capsule collection, and there's a dress that has been made. They were presented on the Hearth Day on the 22nd of April last year, actually this year. And they actually look and feel like silk, so it's a blend. 30% of this is silk and 70% is orange fiber. And actually they also developed a dress and a wall actually outfit with shoes and bags for the Green Carpet Challenge 2 months ago. So they are also exploring the potential of how to use the fiber in their collection, not just in daily wear, but also in more applications so that they can support us in this.
Well, thank you so much, Enrica, really.
Thank you.
And we have one final speaker who will be connected via Skype. It's Julia Houston from Projecto QUID. Projecto QUID is an eco-fashion business that employs workers from vulnerable social groups to manufacture beautiful ethical fashion collections. Project QUID creates environmentally and socially sustainable products. The collections are made by using other fashion and textile companies' leftover fabrics that would risk ending up in landfill or to be incinerated. Julia manages QUID's institutional relations and partnerships and has a deep interest for social innovation and sustainable development. Hello, Julia. No, wait, we don't hear. Just a second. There.
Maybe she, yeah.
Are you muted? Technical.
Can you hear us? Okay, she can hear us.
So
What
it's
is
her.
the reason we can't hear her? Just a second, please. Shall we all say hello? Speaker out. We can't hear her. Okay.
Or maybe can we use microphone and just like manually, like then I put microphone here.
Okay. Can you speak again? Try. No.
Okay.
Are you muted? No.
All right. Well, we don't have very much time, as we've been told, and since we haven't been able to connect, is there any questions in particular that anyone would like to ask?
We have no sound from
Yes. Should I take this over to you?
There is no sound. Actually, it should come here. But just a second. Can I try? We'll take audio. Is the playback device? Everything's fine. I will ask for another technician. We don't-
Thank you for your question. I think like we've all been talking about, it's really about a holistic approach and looking at all stages. And of course, the longevity and durability of the clothes is really important. And quality is really important to us as well. And this is not something new either. So it's something we're working on, but we're also looking at today other ways, just like my colleagues have said here, to look at how to care and repair. And I think we need to be really humble in that it is a process, and to acknowledge that when you are a big part of the problem, you can also be a big part of the solution. And so I'd like to have a very humble approach and say that we are looking at the same solutions.
Thank you very much. Very interesting, rich panel. I would have a question, I think, for Vanessa and Elin. I liked a lot what Elin said about the price, that the wrong choice today doesn't get, pays actually less than the right choice would, as sustainable fashion is still very high end. And you were challenging a little bit policy makers. I personally think, I mean, the big question of the COP23 is a lot the money, and there are a lot of industries and a lot, we're lacking money, basically. So I'm not sure that fashion should be the priority of the policymakers. I would like to challenge the companies, actually, because I had the luck, I talked to the founders of Veja, who explained to me that their products were totally out of scope in terms of price, but they made them accessible through the business model and their investment choices. For example, they never do advertising because they wanted to make the price accessible and sustainable fashion accessible to consumers. So I would like to see more from your side, which would also maybe eventually help Enrica with her issue to make your profits go into sustainable fashion and in the investment of materials or making the price more accessible.
I'll start. Yeah, in many ways, I totally agree with you. And there are different ways of making sustainable fashion more accessible. It's also in terms of offering the customers alternatives to traditional shopping. So, I mean, if you can't afford to buy a new Filippa K garment, for instance, you can actually buy it secondhand, or you can rent it. So that's one way of actually making it, having a business model that supports a higher price. But then also, I mean, the reason why clothes are cheap. The reason why it's cheaper to make the bad choices is because we do not pay the true cost of water. We do not pay the true cost of oil, and that's not only affecting the fashion industry. I mean, this is affecting globally all sectors, actually. And that we're actually having subsidies that for oil, for instance, or for cotton, that we know is an unsustainable fiber that we cannot use anymore. It would do a lot to actually remove those. And as I said, to reach that critical mass, to the majority of all the companies to make those better choices, I think we do need something else than just the moral aspect. I'm sorry, but I think that's the reason, and I would love to have a collaboration with policymakers and politicians to see this change.
Okay, so I'm sorry that we weren't able to connect to QUID. Hopefully, and I'm sure there will be other opportunities. And so we have one more question available, and it's for the gentleman in the back.
Okay, thank you. So my name is Aris Tseba. I work for the Stockholm Environment Institute, and I have a question for the big companies here. So, I mean, being a Swede myself, both H&M and Filippa are close to my heart, and so I have a shirt from COS and pants from Weekday today. But so one thing I noticed in your presentation is that while you have these ambitions, and I think it's very interesting that the private sector is now going beyond corporate social responsibility when it comes to sustainability targets. But nobody mentioned, for example, the Agenda 2030 or the Sustainable Development Goals. And so I think this could be, there is an opportunity for not doing double work, or for actually cooperating across companies if including already existing frameworks that are developed by international organizations, by the public sector. So if you could elaborate a little bit about that, where do you see the Agenda 2030 in your work?
Absolutely. Thank you. I think you're bringing up a really important question. And of course, I mean, the Sustainability Development Goals are a source for us to be able to develop the goals that we have, and they're really a driver for us as well. So the way we have worked with them is looking at, okay, what do we need to do to get there as well? And then we've created our own targets, and really the way I was describing also then taking the process of first establishing those main targets that are across the company and across the group, but then looking at, okay, what do they actually mean for each business function? So it's really starting with the goals and the agenda for 2030. What can we do as a company to get there, and translating that into our own targets? So they are a basis for our targets and our ambitions.
If I may add, we already have a number of industry initiatives of which we're active members and supporters. Like one I mentioned during my presentation is the Better Cotton Initiative. There's a number of global leading brands that are investing in these projects. And also I wanted to mention the Sustainable Apparel Coalition, which is again another industry-led initiative that we're developing an index to measure the impact of our products.
Both social and environmental.
Social and environmental. And there's like the majority of the apparel brands in the world, and even footwear brands, that are part of it right now. So there's a lot of collaboration that is already happening. We didn't mention it probably because also in the interest of time, we couldn't go into all the details of our work. But we constantly and daily basically collaborate. Actually, I think the apparel industry is one of the industries where you have a very strong and tight collaboration because of the challenges that we all face, and because each of us individually cannot really make the change that is needed.
And if I quickly add to that, I think it's really important. I mean, the Sustainable Apparel Coalition is really creating the leveled playing field that we're looking for, so that we can also compare across the industry, and also making it possible for our consumers in the end to make informed choices and to increase traceability and transparency. So that's a really important collaboration.
All right, well, I believe our time is up. So thank you very much for attending, and to our panelists. And I hope that some of the examples and presentations set here today will show that action is possible on all fronts for big and small companies, and that strong and meaningful commitments and innovation will hopefully allow us to transform this challenge into an opportunity and set us on course towards a low carbon economy. Thank you very much for your time.